So my name is Dr. Alison Keneally, and I am Vice President for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion at South East Technological University in Ireland. I suppose I've been working in Irish higher education for 23 years now. I originally began in an academic post, so as a legal academic, and lectured in my discipline area for a number of years. And then I made the move into academic management, initially being a head of department and then moving on to a role as campus coordinator. So I suppose held a number of roles in the kind of the academic and then academic leadership space. And then about 7 years ago, I got the opportunity to head up our university Athena Swan application. So there was a lot of emphasis been put on higher education on equality, diversity, and inclusion, and in particular gender equality. So I was delighted to be asked at the time, and I kind of made a leap into the unknown a little bit. So I took on the Athena Swan work in the university and led it to the to get a bronze award at that point. And then from there, I suppose, ended up continuing to work in the EDI space, and that brought me to the role I'm currently in, which is as Vice President for EDI in South East Technological University. So I think there's still lots of challenges, unfortunately, but at the same time, there's been amazing progress. So, I mean, like if we look across the higher education landscape, I mean, we now have female presidents of our universities. We see more female members of executive teams across the universities, which is really, really important. And we see more women coming into senior academic posts and other leadership posts in our university. So I think all of that is really, really important. But we do still have some challenges. So I think, look, we know that there is still a certain amount of gender bias, albeit often unconscious bias, that still exists in relation to women in the workplace. And I think that is always going to be a challenge, unfortunately, for us. I think despite the success that we have had in Ireland, there is still some underrepresentation at senior levels. So we know we still don't have gender balance across the sector when it comes to senior academic posts and academic leadership posts in particular. So I think there's a real challenge there. I think there are lots of societal expectations on women as well, particularly in relation to women who have care and responsibilities. I know I myself have two young children, and it's a huge challenge trying to juggle, I suppose, those care and responsibilities with work as well. And that's something that kind of, people always ask you about that, but they don't necessarily ask the men about that. So I think there's a societal thing there around care and responsibilities. And there is a perception, certainly, that senior level posts or women in leadership, those kind of posts, that they're not compatible, I suppose, with having kind of responsibilities outside of the workplace. So I think institutions, universities really have to step up to show that people can balance family and work commitments. And that leadership roles, that even though they might require, people think they require long hours and mobility and, kind of difficult schedules, and that can cause difficulties. But I think there are lots of things we can do to improve that, but it is still a challenge. And then the final kind of thing I would say, and again, it's improving, but there is a lack sometimes of, or there was historically a lack of mentors, I think, for women. So, particularly when there wasn't a lot of women at more senior levels, it wasn't as easy maybe for women to get mentorship or kind of from more senior leaders who could help guide them along the journey. I think that is changing now, and that's really to be welcomed. So I think that's one of the really useful things around having these kind of senior leadership programs for women that we'll talk about later, is that people have the opportunity to build up those networks and those opportunities for mentorship. Yeah, so it's hugely important. So I suppose linked back to what I just said, I think like we still don't have balanced representation at senior and at leadership levels. So I think, these kind of programs which will, I suppose, enable women and help women to move on to the next stage of their career path are really, really important. So we can get to a point where we have gender representation and gender balance, but also that we have that can be sustained, because I think we've put a lot of time and effort in the sector into getting to the point that we're at now. But, we can look to other countries around the world to see how quickly progress can be rolled back on. So I think these kind of programs are really important to create a sustainable gender balance and representation across our universities. So that's really important. Like we also know that gender diverse leadership improves decision making. It actually makes our universities better. It improves innovation. It improves adaptability. All of those really good things that we know about more inclusive workplaces in any event. I think as well, programs like this are really, really important because, as I said, it helps to provide women with networks, access to networks, to meet people across other organizations, to get information, what's that organization like, what are, what job opportunities are coming up, what kind of conferences are available, just I think all of that networking piece is hugely, hugely important. And sometimes I think women, we're so busy doing the other things, we don't always take the time out to do that. So for me, certainly, I think those would be the reasons why the program is really important.